Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday. Here we are again, live, talking to you about London market issues, challenges, opportunities this week with a bit of a focus around, obviously, the war, the Gulf War 3, not World War 3. I don't think we're calling that yet, are we? We're going to look at maybe a return to the office, Ben, and what that means. And also, I just wanted to talk through some insights from a breakfast briefing that I ran around kind of data, AI maturity, and kind of what that tells us, specifically within kind of London market underwriting. So, yeah, all good. Are you well?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, it's. I thought spring had sprung, but now it's going to get cold again.
Yeah,
Hence, we are both in jumpers.
yeah,
Rather nicely matching, complementing jumpers, I must say. It's almost like we planned it, but we didn't.
Almost. Right, let's crack on. So, Ben, well, we've got to talk about kind of the war, I suppose. And what's quite interesting is the role that insurance is playing in the kind of the fast-moving dynamics of this situation. This is from last week insurance business newsletter that was kind of warning around the price increases of insurance, and that some insurers were kind of issuing 72 48-hour notices of withdrawal of war cover and things like that. And of course, since then, it's moved on. It's quite interesting. This quote from Dylan Mortimer, Marine Hull UK war leader at Marsh. That's a great job title.
Yeah.
Pete Hexworth would be happy with that. So an estimate of a near-term increase in marine hull insurance in the Gulf could range between 25 to 50%, barring any direct attack on merchant shipping. And of course, we've seen this week that attacks on shipping has taken place. So you kind of just wonder whether insurance is going to be obtainable in the kind of near to medium term until all this settles down. And it's pretty fascinating, actually, the impact it's having.
Of course, it's fine because Donald Trump has said that there will be an insurance policy from America that will cover everything. The biggest, best policy ever written in insurance that nobody's ever seen and can hardly believe. But actually, I think most people have said we don't really even understand what this is. So putting that to one side, I think the interesting, a couple of things strike me about this story. One, early on, how chaotic the industry was on its communications, because it was in the FT that there were going to be these exclusions, war exclusions triggered, and the FT insurance editor was saying this is didn't really have anything to say other than this is what's happening. And then there was a whole sort of scurrying around about, oh well, actually no, they're not necessarily exclusions, they're just normal things that happen in a policy, and that's what goes on, and we adjust policies. It doesn't mean we can't cover things. Now then there was an article which was written about the losses that potentially could happen to shipping, and there was a statement, I think, from Lloyd's Register or something about this, saying that, and I may have got that wrong, I'm sorry if it isn't Lloyd's Register, but it was a body in the marine market saying that this is not about this is about the potential loss of a ship, not the actual insurance coverage and all that sort of stuff. But it omitted to mention, because it went on LinkedIn, that actually the most important thing is the people on the ships and so on that you're trying to protect, the humans. And someone had to write underneath, actually, this is more about the personnel of the shipping companies that we're trying to protect as well. Now, I think it kind of typifies how bad insurance is at communicating in these times of crisis. Because there's nothing prepared, it seems to me, on the PR front that says this is how it works, this is how it operates. I want someone who I trust getting up and saying, I mean, I don't know what that Marsh person is, good or bad, but I think they're just talking about rate rises. Okay, so instead of saying just that, I think they need to say a holistic kind of statement, classic kind of crisis PR, saying this is what we do, this is how it operates, we adjust, we do this, we work with government, and I'm not saying you want to sugarcoat anything or pretend it's not happening or there aren't difficulties, but we just seem to have lost, the industry seems to, in the specialty market, seems to have lost any kind of spokespeople or people who get out on the front foot and start talking about it. And then we're in a mess and we're kind of backtracking. Even I haven't seen Patrick Tiernan talking about it, for example. Charles Roxburgh has said he's met the government, but he hasn't been on the media talking about it. I mean, at least, the previous chair, Carnegie Brown, used to get onto the media when there was crises. He did that with COVID, I think, and other things. But they just seem to have, everybody seems to shut up shop, and then we're in a defensive situation, really. So it's a bit, that I think has been really poor, really. And yet, obviously insurance is absolutely crucial to this.
Yeah. And hence I went back to an article from 7 days ago to trigger this conversation. Where are all the other statements from everyone else?
There just isn't one, and I'm afraid there are lots. And the London is famous for marine. It has 40% of the world. I think just about 40% of the global marine insurance market, and yet we haven't had any kind of person who can stand up and say, right, look, this is what's going on. This is how it works. This is how it operates. If it's a 7-day war, it's this. If it's a 7-week war, it's this. We've got every other spokesperson on the planet talking about economic situation, oil situation, political situation, but not one person has been on the media that I've heard, and I kind of listen to all this newsy stuff all the time, talking about insurance.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity to put forward the value of it and to be heard in this situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think the trade press are doing a decent job. I've seen insiders doing some stuff on it and things like that. But that's from within the industry. That's not the BBC or the FT or I think we need that. We need that sort of. We need to somehow get that going. It just seems to me every time we have these crises and insurance is called into question, it gets a bad rap.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll watch this space. You never know. Tonight on.
I'll do it. For a fee.
A very low fee.
All inquiries. It's gone very quiet on that chat on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
All inquiries to me, to my agent.
Yeah, that's not, and that isn't me, by the way, before you start emailing me about it. So, very good. Okay, let's just talk a bit about data and AI. So as I said, this week I ran a breakfast briefing, and it was around the use of AI in London market underwriting, and really tried to uncover what people were doing in that space and how mature kind of their initiatives were. So ahead of the session, I asked just a couple of simple questions. What are your biggest challenges when it comes to deploying your data strategy? And then the second one around, have you deployed AI or Gen AI in your organization? Yeah, I didn't go as far as agentic because I don't think there are that many that are doing that. I know WPA are, but they're slightly different health insurer. And I think what's interesting in some of the answers, it kind of gives us a bit of a snapshot around where the London market is, and it's not kind of the technology that is the problem, but I think it comes down to the data. So I just put a couple of things together to kind of summarize this. So yeah, the first one being, and the most consistent theme, is that the data foundations are still causing the most amount of operational friction. So there were several respondents to my 2 questions who talked about the number of manual processes that are sitting behind underwriting and operational workflows. For example, there are thousands of manual spreadsheet processes, still exist across the business. One quote from that. And that's quite telling, because when you hear people talk about agentic AI or automated underwriting, it sounds like it's the technology that's the challenge, that's the hard part. Whereas actually, I think it's more basic than that. It's about the data, and that being data inconsistency, a bit arriving late, the kind of manual handoffs you've got, and you can't put AI over that type of data foundations. It'll just, as somebody said, I think, just give you the wrong answer quicker.
Yes.
Yeah. But, yeah. So I don't know.
Not unrelated to. Not related directly to AI, but I think in claims we've asked a similar question, and data is seen to be the biggest challenge in claims as well. So the industry wide, this and this, I think the thing in the middle isn't just. I think there's a lot of data, but I think it's the quality of that data, and I suspect people will say the structure and all that sort of thing, because it's all of that stuff. But I think, I think it was said at the at Tintech, wasn't it? Certainly one of the sessions I was in. Just you can't really start with this AI stuff if your data's in a mess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it also just touches on the kind of the data ownership piece. So we've talked about kind of the way that AI and these tools are kind of democratized. So you can just use them at home, and you can use them in pockets within your organization. And I think what that can lead to is, either IT groups, coming up with isolated innovations using these tools, rather than a kind of holistic approach with a business strategy, just going, okay, what are the key problems that we need to solve in our organization, and then how can IT and these tools support it? And that was a pretty big talking point as well, and one that we've talked about before. And then the third one on kind of around data was actually the kind of the structure of it, and really the kind of unstructured nature of the way that underwriting is currently performed. And that is quite difficult to kind of change. You need to have some quite meaty conversations with underwriters, and you need to have a really good story around how you're trying to help them. I think what was clear is you can't just turn them and go, look, we've developed this tool. It's 95% accurate for a technical price. Why don't you use it? It's you've got to kind of bring people along. yeah. It doesn't work like that. So it's understanding kind of where the data is, how people currently work, trying to extract that extra piece of data that will either mean that you write more, or you actually exclude bad ones because you're not looking in the right place. So it's quite interesting.
It's interesting because I think I think this is entirely from a kind of data and tech perspective. This is taken, whereas actually, I've just been writing an article about the whole that nearly always the decision to choose an organization and pay for something from it is a human decision somewhere along the way. It might have been enabled by data or technology, but it's a human choice. And I think that is probably partly when people say, "Oh, there's cultural resistance to this," or they don't want to do it. I think there's some genuinely will be concerns about, well, I can see that you could do this, I could see that you could organize this, and that might be helpful, but where does it fit with how I operate, how I work culturally, basically, not in terms of the knowledge that I create or I own or I use in my job. And I think this is about moving stuff that's in people's heads, effectively, what you might call sort of implicit data. So the knowledge you have about a broker's birthday, or the types of way they like to have a risk presented, or they prefer to go for a beer at the Lamb and then chat about it, or they like the theatre, or whatever it happens to be, that gets the job done or gets the business and earns the decision. They're very human things, and they're not going to be in these systems. They're not they're not things that you can codify really. So what the conversation here is about codified data is still pretty poor. So the codified data is crap basically, and hence therefore the best stuff, if you like, sits in the underwriters' heads. So inevitably, not necessarily, by just digging their heels in, they will say, well, actually, everything that's valuable in this business sits in my head, and not everything that's not that great sits on these so-called systems where we spend a lot of money. So I think there is a point to be made about how does knowledge become an asset, and data, not just data, but knowledge in a business become an asset without you kind of losing the soul of the company, which is the people and its human characteristics, I suppose, its ethos, or its way of working, or it's the experience you have in going to that building and meeting those people.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. I heard another comment at Tintech, which was somebody was talking to an underwriter and they said, see, that's why I knew I was right. I've kept every single email in my inbox from the last 20 years. And now AI can go through and, using Copilot, kind of pull out all the different things that have happened over that 20-year period. And I think it's quite interesting how you can work, with tools. And we've talked about this before, kind of the drudgery bit or the manual process. Underwriters don't want to be taking the paper and then manually inputting it into a system. And I think we can forget about that now. I think you can get tools that will extract and populate a record.
I don't disagree with that, other than would that person then give all the data they've got that they can do themselves, that is very valuable knowledge to them personally, and say, yes, I'll share it with my organization? Or will they just say, I think I'll keep that in my back pocket for the day I need it when they're going to fire me, or they say, we don't need you anymore? So I don't think it's always that, but I just think there is this is the way we work. And remember, you're dealing, particularly in London, you're dealing with specialists who take pride in that specialization and have been told all their lives that they are really specialist and special, and to then sort of kind of say, oh, hang on a minute, don't worry about all that. That's all a load of nonsense these days, because as Jeremy says, we can just take everything you've got and boil it down to a one-pager in Copilot. It's pretty demoralizing. And you might arguably say, well, I don't really think that's the way we do business around here, or the way to make money. And I think that is a conversation that has to happen, which you can't, I think we're probably both saying the same thing, is you can't sort of push this too far with the kind of rational, this is what data does, and put it in a system and we'll all be happy, we'll all be fine, because nobody fundamentally believes that that's the case, because we've seen it happen in all sorts of areas. It's not just AI, this is technology. And it doesn't necessarily make us happier or better at what we do. In fact, often creates more work, sometimes good work, but not always.
I think what was interesting around the table when we had the discussion is very similar to the one that we're having now, is that I think the point was made, underwriting is not a kind of vanilla, it all happens like this.
No, it's an art.
It isn't. Yes, and so and some underwriters were more disposed to kind of use the tools and the tech and the data in order to enhance their way, and others don't, because it's the way that they've worked before, it's the type of line of business that they're in, or whatever else. So I think there's the nuance that needs to be, and I think we are talking about the same thing here, needs to be taken into consideration. You can't just say underwriting can be done by a computer. Yeah, of course it could, but could it be done better? Or could it collect data points that would help a human underwriter?
Yeah. Does it then what, or this, there's this thing, so what, now what, then what, or whatever it is, it's kind of what, so what, now what. So that's the phrase. Yeah. So what is like, okay, so we've got technology can do this. So what do we do once we've got that? So if you said, for example, we can commoditize and price. We can price all commoditized risks in this market in 10 seconds or 2 seconds. They'd go, yeah, okay, that's good. So what? The so what would be, well, that's fine, but then the price would drop dramatically on those. Yes, we'd save costs, but the price would also drop because everybody would know you literally press a button to do it. So the value in there has disappeared, the perception of that and the actual value has disappeared. So you can't, that becomes a commoditized, price-driven thing. And then you say, so what? And then it's the so what is, what do we do now if we can do that? And then that, of course, is the argument of, well, we should innovate or create new products, different products that solve more complex risks, and that is, I think, what we're dealing with is with a situation in which we're saying, what ultimately does this technology do and how quickly does it do it, to stuff that's dead easy to do and doesn't necessarily need a human being doing it. And then the other stuff really is more about the kind of the craftsman element, if you like, which is actually these are tools that people who are clever, smart, curious, come up with weird ideas, entrepreneurial, all sorts of things. The sort of people who make businesses really fly, who are a bit different, a bit quirky, they say, this is fantastic because I can now do X with this that I couldn't do before. And, it's kind of got my creative juices flowing because of that, and does it release that creativity is not really a conversation we're having at the moment. It's a conversation we should have, but at the moment, the conversation is about cost and efficiency, which is a cul-de-sac in the end, because yes, you get it, but then everybody gets it very quickly.
Yeah.
And then you're still in the same position, which is, oh God, that's all sold now for tuppence halfpenny, where we were selling it for a lot more. So there's a period, with things like facilitization that brokers are doing, I'm sure they'll make a ton of money for a period of time, but then that'll drop because they've only got a little bit of first mover advantage on that. And then everybody will be doing it, and then they'll start dropping the prices because you can't make high margins off commoditized business where the value of the data is so minimal in a way. You've codified it. So once you codify it, the theory goes, it drops in price dramatically. You know that from everything we see in the non-insurance world, once it's cheap. So, Chinese companies make things that you look at and go, God, let's take my coffee scales, on the face of it, if you look at that in absolute terms, that looks like quite a complicated bit of machinery, but I only pay 50 quid for it. And I can't understand how someone can make that for 50 quid. Well, the reason they can make it for 50 quid is because they sell 1 million. Yeah. But the margin is like wafer thin. But and they do it in a big factory. So that's a different business model. That's a Domino's type business model. It's not the high-end restaurant model. So we've got to decide what sort of business we're in, I think, as well, after all that, as we go through this process. Are we selling stuff that's really, really hard to do and needs clever underwriters, clever people? Or is it really, and this is the fundamental question about the insurance industry, is it clever? How much of it is clever and how much of it is just actually really, really simple administration?
Yeah.
Risk transfer done on an administration system. Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting things you said there was only one thing you said.
Thanks. Got it about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Was we have to decide. And I think we're absolutely not. I think, from the conversations that I've had, we're kind of feeling our way around this. To your point around, at the moment, it's all around operational efficiency and, how do we speed things up, which is fine. That's a good conversation to have, and it's a good starting place. But there are more fundamental things to think about as this technology becomes more and more prevalent. One hilarious thing I heard was that I can't exactly remember whether it was an insurer talking to a reinsurer, but they basically said you can't use any of our data. You can't use AI tools on it. And you're just going, but if you Google now, or you put something in your phone, the AI is built in. The AI is built into the chips, into the new computers. that's an impossible position to be in.
Yeah. It's the what's that? The finger in the dike thing. You can't do that. You can't stop it now. Once it's started, it's impossible. And I think that will go quite quickly because it is just impossible to stop that.
Yeah. But I think we are in an interesting point. Somebody put it quite well. It feels like we're in the .com era, the opening kind of gambits of that, where people are going, "Oh, websites, what are we going to do with them?" All this kind of thing. Oh, Google's here, and he's going, "We've got this technology that, looking back, we had this technology that was up and coming, and we did our best to stop our employees from using it." How do you balance that that kind of drive for innovation without the kind of without
and you are dealing with all sorts of contradictions and counterfactuals all the time. We'll talk about another one in a minute. But I had someone this morning, and I won't say which company, but a very, very, very works with a very, very big tech company worldwide, very big tech company, and they are not allowed to use any AI-based research at all with that company because that company doesn't trust it. And yet they're selling shed loads of it. You just go, well, great, you don't use it, but you'll sell it to everyone else.
Yeah, that's good. Right, well, we'll, as always, keep an eye on this. It's an interesting discussion, good debate, Ben. Thanks for that, and I'm sure it's evolving pretty quickly in across the business. That's what's quite interesting about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and some companies are taking the leap now to kind of AI-ify things and losing people and so on. But I still feel we're in the we're nearly always right on this show, obviously, but we're in the supermarket checkout area of, what a great, it feels like a great idea when you put all the checkouts in and you sacked all your till people until you realize you've lost touch with the customer.
Yeah.
And you still have to have people who stand by those bloody machines and do the age check and help you when your runner beans won't scan.
Yeah.
Other vegetables are available.
Yeah, they are. Let's talk about The Office, Ben.
That's no way to talk about underwriters.
I listened to, I think it was yesterday actually, a Radio 4 program called Doe from memory. And they basically get some futurologists to talk about the future of work. And yesterday they were talking about the future of the office and what the hell is its purpose especially after COVID. And we've talked about this before. And I think you've got some quite interesting kind of data or some initial insights.
Yeah. So I'm not going to give too much away here because some of this is proprietary, but I can give some interesting kind of general kind of high level things on it. But essentially, we've run a study for several years about trading spaces, which was about office spaces and what brokers thought of them and the facilities that were there, and with a view to saying these are quite expensive places. Do they work? How do they work? What do brokers do in them? What do they value about it? Does it mean that they place more business with that insurer? So a lot of, in the early days when people moved out of really dingy offices in Leadenhall Street into the beautiful palaces of 20 Fen and the Leadenhall and the Scalpel buildings and all that, into kind of hotel type, environments, it was like, it's kind of like we were doing restaurant reviews, and that's how I set it up essentially. So there was a kind of index of the best offices. And then of course, as soon as the new shiny office came along, that one became the winner. So there was a bit of an arms race, and still is, to be honest, on those spaces. But as COVID came through, there was clearly nobody going to those offices, and there was all the shenanigans over people working from home, and we've gone through that long period and still going through it, and that's kind of unraveling. So in the meantime, also we've had automation and trading systems and people being able to comfortably trade without having to be there in person. And I think that we've had, and then there's a million and one conversations about automation of pricing and algo trading and everything else, with a view, like an impression that actually nobody's going to need a human being at all at some point in the future in this industry. Yet the recent data we're seeing is actually saying that, contrary to that, actually the face-to-face element is increasing and is preferred, and by brokers, right? Brokers who are currently automating a lot of stuff are saying we need to get into office talks. Now, we're pretty sure that part of this is because more people are back in offices. But where the most important point about this is where those face-to-face interactions happen, those brokers are much more likely to place and choose those businesses to do business, right? And I'm sure there are other knock-on effects that are positive, like you see other products, you get something of the brand takeout and everything else. And so I actually think this is part of what we were talking about earlier, is the human element is kind of kicking back, not kicking technology into touch, but is reaffirming where its place is and its importance in, this is the London market, in the London market ecosystem. And so it's contrary necessarily to what it is. So therefore, what we're starting to talk about is actually you need to invest, businesses need to invest in this in-person, interpersonal stuff, instead of thinking, which your CFO might be thinking, hey, when can we close this office and have only 6 people pressing the buttons in the basement? I think that's not going to happen, because it's not happening. And I think the other thing to say about it is just how chaotic it all looks when you look at that particular piece of research, because there's still a huge amount goes on email. There is an explosion of broker systems, all different systems being used, and then there's some drop-offs in some of the big things like PPL. So you go, and then there's this increase in face-to-face and things. So you've got a really complex situation evolving, but nobody has any particular data on this that's that great, that you'd need for time and motion, because it's a massive time and motion thing, really. So my view is that we could easily, unless we really get to grips to understand what's going on, yet again wander into a situation without thinking about it or planning it, where we end up wasting a lot of money, either on technology or on people or on offices or whatever. We need to understand the balance, and we need to understand what's going to work. And to some extent, that's determined by people, again, deciding they want to trade in offices, and that it's how they're going to win. Because largely all a company says to a broker is, can you trade and win some business? And if you're winning business, they leave you alone and pay you a bonus.
Yeah.
It's only when you're not winning business they ask.
Phil's come up with a good one. I was speaking at the at one of the events, and basically we were talking about, have you been mandated to come back to the office 5 days a week? And they're basically saying there is a push towards that. And I was saying, like, we work in an industry where the products and services that we sell are just almost entirely intangible. There's nothing to them apart from the contract. Now, if you're buying something that is a multi-million-pound premium, then you are probably wanting to go and make sure that the organizations that you're working with are there where they say they are.
I think so. Or you need to attach it to people or characters or personalities, because that's what we remember, of course. And then, or when you buy that multi-million-pound premium, there is a Bentley turns up outside, with one of those pillows that have got gold braid around them, with the policy there, and a butler with a little glass of champagne to deliver it to you, so you feel you've actually bought something. And you could do that. It would be a bit. We would probably be terrible at doing that because we're so disorganized in the insurance market. But anyway, you kind of could. Alternatively, and we've talked about this sort of less facetiously, in the sense of, once you go to trading, what do you do with things like the slip, which is on there? There is a kind of virtual slip, I know now, but how do you represent your brand? And that's going to be really interesting. Is how does and some of that kind of design thinking is going to come in which those things that we do on screen are going to become more engaging, rather like social media and WhatsApp and Instagram and all those sorts of things are engaging because they've been designed to be so. So I think we've got to sort of think about that design thinking in the systems and the technology too.
Yeah.
And look at what Key is doing on that, by the way, because that's kind of really interesting.
Very good. Right, a lot of ground covered today. Thanks, Ben. That was good. Guess what I saw?
Phil, by the way, who lives out in the middle of nowhere and is never in the office.
Well, well, he can't be because he had a knee operation. So he's
I hope he's all right.
Yeah.
I hope you're all right, Phil.
He went to the office for the first time yesterday, so he's feeling better.
Oh, is he? He's crowing about it now. Everyone's got to come in now.
I think everyone has been in. There we are.
That's good, yeah.
It's the way we roll. Hey, I went to London yesterday. I went to the theatre, darling, and before we got to the theatre, I saw is it a Waymo cab, a driverless?
Oh yeah.
Driving around the streets of London. That was quite a sight.
Yeah, you haven't been in one then?
No, I don't. I think they must still be testing. I couldn't.
I think they are testing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are.
I think there was a guy in the driver's seat just kind of sitting there. But
was it in the West End?
Yeah, going down Regent Street.
Yeah. I'd heard they were being tested sort of southeast London, some places as well.
So that'd be interesting when those start appearing in fleets around the city.
Yeah, they're all over San Francisco, aren't they? Apparently.
Yeah, it's one of the things to do. I think if you go on TripAdvisor, it goes top 10 things to do. Take a Waymo cab.
Yeah. There
we are.
They'll be coming to me anytime soon.
No, thank you. Yeah. Good.
No, thanks. I do use Lime bikes now though.
Yes.
Which are good, I think. But I've noticed how there was an article yesterday about how terrible people are on these and they don't wear helmets and all that sort of thing. Which I don't wear a helmet either, and I've cycled for a long time on those bikes, but it's sort of inconvenient to carry a helmet around all the time. And you do, and they were saying about, kids don't like it because it gives them a bad hair day, but it's like, I kind of get that in a way. It's like if you're going to a meeting, you don't want to kind of be putting stuff on your head and then going in because you look like a bit of a disheveled helmet head.
Yeah.
Helmet hair.
Forget to take it off. What kind of meeting
But
is this?
the other thing I'd say is that 9 in 10 of those people on those bikes go through red lights and ignore every single rule of the road.
Yeah. So whether they're wearing a helmet or not,
no, it doesn't. It's just, but everybody's kind of got used to that actually. So you can't retrospectively apply all these rules because I don't think it's going to happen. But actually, in a way, you just know that there were just people, idiots on overpowered electric vehicles, gadgets, scooters and things.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got onto that, but we did.
No. Anyway, we're here now. So why don't we wrap things up?
Yeah.
Any good this weekend, Ben? What are you up to?
I'm not doing. I'm a bit of gardening. I've got literally a ton of bark. Rough.
I wasn't expecting that.
Got a ton of bark to put down. Rough.
Good.
Yeah. But that's what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, I'll be a bit. I don't know. It might be easy. It might not. But yeah.
So you're hiring a digger, or is it a manual job?
No. It's manual. Wheelbarrow it around. I did think of going to the expense of buying some digger from the brilliant machinery shop up the road from me, which is very tempting. But it seemed, I think, $2,000 to do one job like that would be a bit much.
Yeah, overkill. There we are.
Yeah,
I'm doing something similar. I think we're having a new shed put in, so it's dismantling the old shed. Such fun.
I am just very quickly. Someone I was at a dinner party, well, an outside barbecue one night in the summer, and suddenly there was a huge explosion, and a bit like the Wizard of Oz, there was this shed flying around in the air on fire, like up in the air, like 30, 40 feet above us, and it then came crashing to earth. And so just this is a warning for you. What this person had done was he had the same thing. He was getting a new shed, and he was Friday evening in a bit of a rush. It was coming the next day. So he just chucked petrol into it and threw a match in, which of course creates like a rocket type device. And yeah, so then the next thing was the fire brigade were there and all sorts. Yeah, but lucky he didn't get killed, but he was fine.
Wow.
You can do that if you want to do that, if your neighbours aren't too close.
If that they are, so I'll be sure to film it. If
no, there's a quick way of getting rid of it. That's what I'd say.
All right, good. Right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. More sheds and gardening advice next week, but for now, enjoy the weekend. Bye.
Bye.